the EU must take steps to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. Groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, connected to the Brotherhood, have found ways to operate within EU borders under the guise of civil society. Though over 40 million euros in EU funding from 2007 to 2020. The report that I commissioned shows that the infiltration is significant. And it's not just about the money. Though over 40 million euros in EU funding from 2007 to 2020 is already worrying. It's about the influence. Brotherhood-linked groups like Islamic Relief Worldwide and others have embedded themselves deeply within European institutions. They've created something that you could call a network of networks across the continent. Think pan-European bodies like the Council of European Muslims and the European Council for Fatwa and Research. These aren't just charitable organizations. They're lobbying groups, think tanks, even players in EU-funded projects on integration. And they've been using EU resources to advance a separatist agenda. It's a sophisticated operation, deeply embedded in the social, political, and religious fabric of Europe. And we've seen national governments like France, first and foremost, but also Germany, act against these groups. But the EU continues to overlook the evidence. And it's beyond just oversight, it's a failure of political will. Well, the systemic failures are a mix of weak oversight, ideological blind spots, and bureaucratic inertia. EU funding mechanisms are designed to check compliance with financial rules, but there's no real ideological scrutiny. In many cases, groups with extremist ties get a free pass because their paperwork checks out. And the EU's multicultural policies have allowed ideological groups to masquerade as civil society organizations. Officials often brush off accusations as media reports and avoid confronting the deeper issues. And when we talk about responsibility, I think it falls on multiple levels. The European Commission for dismissing credible evidence, the European Parliament for lack of transparency, and member states for not enforcing stricter safeguards. There's also the issue of complacency. Some politicians are so invested in their multicultural agenda that they don't see the danger or want to see the danger. The funding should be cut, but the EU has been slow to act. European Network Against Racism, known for their ties to Muslim Brotherhood affiliated organizations such as FEMISO, the Organization for Young Female Muslims, and CCIE, the Collective Against Islamophobia in Europe. Despite their Islamist ties, the center-left made a concerted effort to include NR in the consultative forum of Europol. It seems that for Social Democrats and Greens, it makes perfect sense to have enemies of the state scrutinizing our law enforcement agency. Thank goodness we were able to stop it this time. These groups are shaping the narrative in the EU on everything from Islamophobia to integration. Brotherhood-linked groups like NR, FEMISA, and others have access to key EU platforms, and they play a role in influencing EU policy documents. And I mean, the risks, I would say that they are immense. This is not just about spreading ideas, it's about undermining the cohesion of European societies. Groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, connected to the Brotherhood, have found ways to operate within EU borders under the guise of civil society. And this creates a breeding ground for extremism. And when these ideas go unchallenged, they foster division, not integration. So we're already seeing this with the rising levels of anti-Semitism and radicalization. And if we don't act now, it's only going to get worse, as we saw in Sydney. I fundamentally disagree with those critics, because this is all about whether an organization upholds EU values, democracy, rule of law, equality before the law. Legitimate NGOs work within those frameworks, but ideological fronts, especially those tied to the Muslim Brotherhood, pursue an entirely different agenda. They use EU funds to promote separatism and Sharia law under the guise of civil rights and anti-discrimination. The Brotherhood-affiliated groups are very skilled at hiding their true motives. I mean, they go by the strategy of Wasatiyah. They know what to do. Take Islamic Relief, for example. It denies it's tied to Hamas, but the connections are clear. These organizations may look like NGOs on the surface, but they are fronts for radical ideologies. When you see groups pushing non-democratic values or advocating for division, that's when we need to take action. The Brotherhood is central to a strategy of non-violent radicalization, which is driving polarization in Europe. And just the other day, the Islamism watchdog in Sweden, the Foundation Doku, reported that ordinary Muslims hesitate to go to mosques in Sweden because of the radical content in the mosques and in the sermons. And as we know, a lot of those mosques are run by the Muslim Brotherhood. So this network has created an us versus them mentality, framing Muslim communities as victims of European societies, even as they push for values that undermine European democracy. I would say it's a tactics designed to divide. And we're seeing it more and more. We saw the fallout from the murder of Samuel Paty in France and the continued support for Hamas after October 7. And that just shows how far this ideology goes in encouraging violence. So these guys are not just fighting for religious freedoms, they're fighting for a separatist agenda that will create social and political chaos in Europe. And I think if we don't confront this outright here and now, we'll see even more radicalization. We do need immediate action. First, stop funding organizations linked to the Muslim Brotherhood, no exceptions. Second, improve transparency by introducing stricter vetting processes for NGOs receiving EU funding. I would say we need a system that flags organizations linked to extremism automatically, not just after a criminal conviction. Thirdly, we must demand better oversight from the European Court of Auditors and create the EU blacklist for organizations with proven extremist ties. And I also would like EU authorities to create a list of individuals in these networks, because it's often family linked, and you can analyze this ecosystem quite easily if you start mapping the individuals. So that must be done as well. Finally, the EU must take steps to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. They must be chased out of our continent. There should be no room for complacency. Well, I think there's a paradigm shift going on in Europe. I mean, for many years, politicians let radical Islamists go unchecked only because they were afraid to confront it. They were afraid to get the Ikhwan buzzword thrown in their face, Islamophobia. I think that is changing now. I think we're moving towards a situation in which the funding will be cut. It's long overdue, but in Sweden, one of the largest organizations of the Muslim Brotherhood milieu, the Ibn Rushd Educational Foundation, that was a real front organization, has been disbanded because basically the funding dried out after the center-right took power. So we will see this throughout Europe, and we will definitely move towards a designation of the Muslim Brotherhood, so that we can go after the organization and its milieu in full, and freeze bank accounts, and make Europe uninhabitable for these extremist individuals.